Your burqa is blue.
Sonaïra, baisse la musique, on t'entend du dehors. Tu vas nous aider.
Désolée, Nastaran.
I want us to have a good time, which for me now means just time together.
Bittersweet stories from Afghanistan, family ties and tensions in Frankie, and Hollywood arrives here in France for the 45th Deauville American Film Festival. Well, that's all coming up in the show with our film critic Lisa Nesselson. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia.
Now, we're starting with a film that features something we're more used to covering in the news, actually, and that's the Taliban. The Swallows of Kabul has been 7 years in the making. It's an animated feature set in Afghanistan when it was under Taliban rule in 1998. And that film's based on a book that was a bestseller here in France. Tell us more.
I think it's safe to say that unless you belong to the Taliban, you probably don't have a super high opinion of them. This is a sober yet gorgeously drawn story of how dreadful it is for people accustomed to love and freedom to be crushed into a totalitarian system supposedly based on religious traditions that makes women not second class but eighth or ninth class citizens and insists that in a very hot climate they cover up from head to toe. The story revolves around two Afghan couples. Mohsen and Zunara are young and in love. She rankles against the fact that she can't leave the house without covering up from head to toe in a stifling burqa, and he finds himself very disturbed by his own reaction to the public stoning of a woman. The thoughtful animation shows us the places they used to love to visit together, a movie theater, a bookshop. They've been reduced to rubble. The other couple consists of middle-aged Atik and his wife. He works as a guard at the women's prison, which in this case isn't a way station for justice, but for awaiting execution. And his wife, alas, is wasting away from cancer. If it sounds depressing, it is, until it isn't. But a story about life under the Taliban, a group for whom the dark ages were too fun-loving, can't easily be anything but downbeat.
Okay, well, judge for yourself. Here's a glimpse of the distinctive visual style of the Swallows of Kabul.
J'aimerais t'enseigner, mais je ne peux pas le faire à l'école coranique. L'histoire est tronquée, menteuse. Je veux pas retourner la tête de jeunes enfants.
Mohsen, mais tu sais qu'il y a une autre école.
Ah bon?
Une école secrète, où l'on arrive à apprendre aux enfants la littérature, l'art, l'histoire, la vraie. On a besoin de gens courageux et cultivés comme toi. Tu es payé par l'école coranique, mais tu donnes ton cœur à l'école de la vie.
Je sais pas, Avec Sonaïra, on voudrait quitter le pays.
Okay, so as we can see there, the film makes us think about what our life would be like if it were dictated by these harsh rules made by people we never asked them to make.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons it's an important film, because it's easy to just forget that these conditions are still in force in a number of places. In the film, you see mob psychology at work, very disturbing at the stoning of an adulteress or the bloodthirsty crowds at executions in a stadium. There's an excellent scene where, although it's done in watercolor style animation, we can tell by the spreading dark spots on fabric that a woman is sweating up a storm inside her burqa, and none of this is conducive to mental health.
Okay, yes, it points at some very important social questions there. Now, the film premiered in Cannes, shown at the Animation Festival in Annecy here in France. It won a major prize at the Festival of French Language Films in Angoulême, and it was co-directed by two French women.
That's right. Zabou Brightman is an accomplished actress and director who's equally at home with very serious topics or laugh-out-loud material. She directed The Voice Talent, which is extraordinary. The cast features some of France's very best actors, including three who were members of the Comédie Française. And Elia Gobet-Mevlek is an up-and-coming young animator, and I have to say their joint artistic vision makes a devastating story way less hard to take.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll be seeing more from those two. Next, we're looking at a production that was among the 21 films in competition at the Cannes Film Festival this year. It's called Frankie. It's a Franco-Portuguese production directed by American indie filmmaker Ira Sachs. Very high-profile cast there with the near ubiquitous Isabelle Huppert. She's a busy lady. It's just been released here in France, but I remember a lot of people at the Cannes Film Festival didn't think it deserved its place there. What did you think?
Not to put too fine a point on it. I think this baby should have been smothered in its crib. Egats, these characters are annoying. Many of my French colleagues disagree, but this is a self-indulgent, stop and start, lurchingly awkward and unrewarding excuse of a movie. There I go, mincing words again. Woody Allen once said that he makes movies about well-to-do New Yorkers because they have a lot of money, but they still have a lot of problems, and oi, do the well-to-do people in this movie have problems, starting with the fact that they're in this movie. I never thought I'd say this on television, but despite the gifted cast you mentioned, mostly speaking English with some French thrown in, so much of the dialogue is mannered and unconvincing that I was actually glad when I had to leave the theater to use the restroom. I got a little bit of a break. Huppert plays Françoise Frankie Crémont, a famous film and television actress who has invited her family to the photogenic town of Sintra for a summer break. Now, the gathering is very inclusive. People of all ages, from teenagers to their 60s, several nationalities, at least 2 racial backgrounds, if we're keeping track, gay, straight, bisexual, all that carefully curated diversity, and it's still tedious.
Oh dear. Well, let's take a look at some of those rich people who do have problems.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if she and Paul get along?
What are you talking about?
New York can be a very lonely city. They would be good to each other. Eileen and Paul, Paul and Eileen.
Jesus.
What?
You invited her. This is all a plan.
No, I just think she would be perfect for him.
Christ, Frankie. You're playing Cupid again.
Oh. Don't Christ, Frankie, me. You, of all people, should understand.
Now, I guess I must have been born without the receptor gene for what Ira Sachs does, because he's tackled a whole range of different topics in such films as Keep the Lights On, Love is Strange, and Little Men, which under the French title of Brooklyn Village unaccountably won the top prize in Deauville here in 2016. But the prolific Huppert has a different reaction to the director. Let's listen.
The idea of working with Ira Sachs is what drew me to this project. I discovered 2 of his films, Brooklyn Village and Love is Strange. He's a great director. He tackles very intimate subjects, but always remains somewhat detached and subtle, especially in this film, which is about a very serious issue.
Well, I must admit, a lot of critics liked Love is Strange, including myself. I love that film, but you can normally find something positive in any film, nothing here.
To be fair, Huppert is fine throughout. Brendan Gleeson and Marissa Tomei are very good. And Frankie does get much better toward the end, but it's not worth sitting through 4/5 of it to get to that point. And I did get to hear the song Happy Birthday to You, sung in Portuguese.
To the same tune as the English version. Okay, well, next to an important cinema event here in France, the Deauville Festival of American Film is celebrating its 45th edition in Normandy, and that runs from September 6th to the 15th. We'll be covering the event here on France 24. But what have you got to whet our appetite?
Well, Deauville gets that mix right of American independent films, documentaries, and sneak previews of splashier, big-budget items while being low-key. If you've always wanted to attend a film festival in Europe, but you don't speak French, this is geared toward regular movie buffs, and the main auditorium is absolutely world-class. This will be my 26th consecutive visit, and I have seen director after director, young Americans with their eyes falling out of their head because they just can't believe the size of the screen and the auditorium and the 1,200 people staring back at them.
And this year, I think the festival's opening with Woody Allen's film, A Rainy Day in New York.
Indeed. Hallelujah. The film will be in French theaters on September 18th, but this is a great way to start the 45th festival. Allen has been there with many of his films before. And if you like Woody Allen comedies, this one is very entertaining. There are 14 films in the competition, and the jury this year is headed by Catherine Deneuve. They've also invited back an impressive roster of prior jury presidents, including Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who made Amélie, and Claude Lelouch, who, of course, shot part of A Man and a Woman on the beach in Deauville over 50 years ago. One event you will not find anywhere else, and that is that they will be projecting all 8 seasons, that's 80 hours of Games of Throw-In, one throw-in, many games, in a real movie theater, and that's free of charge if you have nothing else to do for a week.
Including eating and sleeping, I presume. So there's a full screening program of American movies, but Deauville also tips their collective hat to some of the great players of the movie industry.
They do tributes every year. This year, awards will be given to Pierce Brosnan and a bunch of women: Gina Davis, Kristen Stewart, Sienna Miller, and Sophie Turner. In fact, 6 of the 14 films in competition were directed by women. And a last-minute addition, really just added, is Johnny Depp, who will attend with Mark Rylance for their new historical drama, Waiting for the Barbarians. And I'll have you know, astronaut Buzz Aldrin used to come whenever he could.
Oh, it's very much an astronaut, not a movie star, as far as I know. And speaking of Buzz Aldrin, the documentary Apollo 11 is featuring in the documentary section at Deauville, and you can also see it on screens elsewhere in France at the moment.
Yes, the uplifting, get it, uplifting, film is the year's biggest non-fiction hit in the U.S., but before it was a hit in 2019, I have to say everything about it was a hit back in 1969. I love this movie without reservation. My cheeks were sore from grinning. There were tears of joy streaming down my face. For now, it's scheduled to be in French theaters just from September 4th through September 8th, but I hope they'll hold it over for a long run because it's very special. I'm a sucker for anything about the space program, and this has been brilliantly assembled from vintage footage, much of it never seen before, and 11,000 hours of audio, which they put together to tell the story. You see the astronauts suiting up, actually getting dressed for work, although in this case their job is nail-biting fun for us to watch. Control rooms lined with row upon row of mostly crew-cut men wearing ties, and precisely one woman. So much is at stake, it feels incredibly suspenseful, even though we all know we did make it to the moon and back. When my husband was a kid, he sent away to the airline Pan Am to reserve a place for when commercial flights to the moon got underway, and he got a numbered card that says, okay, here's your number, but we can't really tell you what it's going to cost eventually, although we suspect that it will be out of this world. Alas, Pan Am, which figures in 2001: A Space Odyssey and Blade Runner, went out of business in 1991. But Richard Bramson says his Virgin Galactic has reservations for more than 600 people, representing $80 million in deposits.
They're going to have to deliver on that sometime soon, I think. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Lisa. We'll leave you with some of that electric archive footage with a clip of Apollo 11. Do remember to check out our website, and we're also on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
The whole Apollo program was designed to get 2 Americans to the lunar surface and back again to Earth safely. The enormity of this event is something that only history will be able to judge. Apollo 11 has very simply been given the mission of carrying men to the moon, landing them there, and bringing them safely back.